Sugar Daddy, what are you talking about?
He would send me money, help me with my kids. His name is Steve, but I haven't seen him maybe February.
And this is the same person we're talking about right here?
Yeah. What is going on?
It looks to me like it was bad and he ended up dead. We're kind of going through all his contacts to find out who could have done this to him. So that's what I'm talking to you, because Steve's not here to tell us. Right? I didn't know exactly what happened.
I truthfully don't know.
I don't believe that's true.
We received a call from our dispatch to check on the well-being of Mr. Wilson. The front door was unlocked. Walking into the back bedroom, we located Mr. Wilson on the bed. There was a lot of dried blood coming out of his mouth, down his chest. It had pooled in his lap and also under his head.
There was blood clearly on the ceiling and wall and soaking the mattress. It looked like he had been inside the home for a few days, deceased.
We found that Steve was stabbed 4 times in the back and shoulders, and then 4 times in the neck and head area. The fatal wound was to his spine.
The stab wounds were, so severe they broke through bones.
There was no forced entry at the residence, but we did locate some watch boxes that were emptied out on the vanity.
We could never locate those in the home, so we assumed they had been stolen. As we continued the investigation, I noticed that all of the cigarette butts were white Marlboro cigarette butts, but when I opened the lid to the ashtray and the cup holder, there was one brown, cool cigarette butt. I believe that it had to have been recent. The DNA from the cigarette butt may point us towards a suspect. The one thing that stood out were some Cash App transfers to a person named Daniel Diamond around the time that we believe he died. We learned that she was an escort that Steve Wilson liked to frequent, and she would come to his house. We started to recognize that that's going to be her street name. And just a Google search located some selfie photographs of a white female with red hair. We entered into a mugshot recognition program, and we were able to match it to Paige Lane.
Paige had an extensive criminal history. She was an escort, and she frequents hotels around St. Louis County area. I also found body camera video with her.
Police department. Is there anybody else in here?
Yeah.
Who is in there?
My boyfriend.
There was a black male in the room with her with the name of Sidney Bias.
Do you have a probation violation? We got to give you a new court date. And I know you're also soliciting.
Sidney Bias had an extensive criminal history of violence and drug-related offenses. He was a documented gang member with Gangster Disciples, and he goes by the name of King. We believe that he was Paige Lane's pimp. On the night that Steve died, she had progressively gotten closer and closer to the house till she was just outside of Steve Wilson's home. We were able to go obtain video footage from those locations. We saw that she had left a hotel on March 31st at around 11 p.m. She was with a person who appeared to be Sidney Bias.
A mile away from Stephen Wilson's house in Wentzville, Paige was seen at the gas station. When the tags were ran, we came up with the name of Sidney Bias as the owner of the vehicle.
However, we could not determine if Sidney Bias was actually with her during that time at the gas station.
Yeah, long time no see.
That's a little bit.
Cool Blue 100, please. Cool Blue.
We discovered she had purchased a pack of cigarettes. We recognized immediately that the cigarettes that were recovered on scene matched the same pack of cigarettes that she had just purchased. Shortly after that, we found a text message from her to an unknown number stating, "I'm going to kill him." She returned to that hotel around 4 a.m. wearing different clothes. The DNA was a match to Paige Lane. We put all manpower into locating her.
We found Steve had text conversations with Paige Lane to the fact that he had given her money to help out with her children. I think he almost thought that they were like boyfriend and girlfriend.
But in the recent weeks, Steve Wilson seemed pretty upset. He accused her of leading him on to gain more money from him. And then shortly after that, we had messages sent by Steve asking other people to post negative reviews on her escort ads.
Steven was trying to burn her pages. Burning an escort's page limits what type of clientele they get. Steve is taking away her business.
If she was not able to earn money, then she wouldn't have been any good to Sydney, her pimp. Between the two of them, that would definitely be a motive to kill Steve.
Steve was just like a kid at heart. He was so happy. Steve's daughter was his entire world. He was at every activity that she had going on. He didn't miss not one. He had pictures posted everywhere around, all her accomplishments and how her grades were doing. He was a proud father. And he loved rehabbing those cars. And he really had his heart set out to fix them for his daughter. He's like, when she turns 16, this car is hers, this car is hers. She was everything to him, and he got taken away. He got taken away.
They believe Paige Lane was residing at a hotel near the airport in St. Louis. About 45 minutes into doing this actual surveillance, we observed Paige Lane leaving the hotel with Sydney Bias.
Police units converged on their vehicle, and we were able to take Sydney and Paige Lane into custody. We kept them completely separate from one another the entire time. We knew that if he was involved or had any involvement in telling her to do this, that it would be very difficult for us to get that out of her because there's a fear relationship between her and her pimp.
The challenge is Sydney had an extensive criminal history. He's been through this before. They were looking to feel him out first to see how he was going to react.
So who were you with today whenever you got picked up? Paige. What's Paige's last name? Lane. Is that is a girlfriend of yours, or how are you guys associated with each other? Straight up, man.
Be on and off sometime, have sex. Stuff like that.
Okay. What does Paige do? Does Paige work?
You would have to have some. I don't want to, because I know she got a warrant. I just don't want to kill nobody.
We know what Paige does. All right. So we can talk open and honestly about it. I know she solicits herself for sex. Okay, that's all right. You can. All right. Would you say that you help her manage that?
No.
You're not her John?
No.
Okay.
No, nothing to do with that. No.
Never ever.
No. This has something to do with solicitation or something?
So what, man? It's a little bit more serious than solicitation. Okay?
You know what's that right here? At all.
Never ever. Never ever seen that man.
Never. You never seen it? Never.
But have you ever heard of the name Steve Wilson?
No. Man, she knows.
I'm just kind of come clean. I don't know, but we're investigating homicide.
Okay, I'm not involved in no homicide with nobody This person right here? I don't even know him. I never seen him. He never seen me. I don't even know him.
And we have quite a bit.
It don't got nothing to do with me though.
That's not true though. We know that's not.
Okay, I don't. There's nothing I can tell you because I don't know nothing about this, and I know y'all got to be lying.
You think we would be lying about something of this magnitude?
Yes.
We do have a lot of evidence that suggests that you were involved in a homicide. Okay.
You can't.
Hang on one second. But in what capacity, we don't know.
You
So
can't.
this would be your opportunity to go ahead and come clean.
You can't.
And tell us in what capacity you were involved.
I don't know this person. This is what I'm telling you.
Did you know what was going to happen when you went out there? It would have been the middle of last week. You weren't out here over the middle of the night?
In Winsville?
Winsville.
No, for what?
It was pretty easy to recognize that he didn't want to provide any information, especially about Paige. Between his drugs, his escort racket, and this murder being investigated, there's little incentive for him to talk to us.
At all. I don't even know this person. It seems like y'all trying to like frame me for something, to be honest. Oh my God, you guys are f***ing nuts.
We'll be right back with you, buddy.
He was not intent on cooperating in any fashion, but we wanted to keep him to see if any information would come alight from Paige's interview. Our hope was that she would give us information putting him at the scene or involved in Steve Wilson's murder in some fashion.
All right. Now, here we want to talk about. So, what was his name? The guy you're just with.
King.
Sydney.
Yes.
Oh, he goes by King?
Well, I mean, that's what I call him.
So, who was he to you?
That's the man who raised my son. So he was not his blood father. No, he helped me when.
So, do you guys live together or stay
No.
together? Did you ride with them today? Do you ride with them often, or?
No, not really.
Okay.
We've been broke up since mid last year.
There's no other friends of yours that maybe give you some money or help you out financially?
I mean, like, I had, like, no, I was like a sugar daddy for a while, I guess you could say, quote unquote.
I mean, sugar daddy, what are you talking about?
Like, he would send me money, help me with my kids, help me get around.
Who was that?
So, his name is Steve, and I don't know his last name though. But I haven't seen him because I haven't been talking to him, and like, when did I go see? Maybe February? Was the last time I've seen him.
And this is the same person we're talking about right here?
Yeah.
She says that she last met with Steve in February, but we know that she was meeting with him in March and getting money from him in March. We knew she was lying the whole time right off the get-go.
He had a lot of contact with a lot of people.
Right.
You ever see anybody at his house when you were over there?
No, but like I've had like other girls call me because like he messaged a whole bunch of, because he was mad at me.
Yeah.
Like he messaged a whole bunch of girls, like other workers, and told them to set me up, to beat me up,
like
to beat me up, to oh she robbed me, you know, no, and girls are calling me, girls
set you up to beat you up.
Yeah, like yeah. And to burn, like, quote unquote, burn my page, you know, say this, that, you know, or whatever, because like, he was mad. What is going on?
We're kind of going through all his contacts to find out who was the last people there,
Okay.
you know, that could have done this to him.
So, could have.
So that's why we're talking to you, because
Okay.
we believe you're one of the last people there.
Oh, okay.
Right when he brings up about we're investigating something with Steve, then all of a sudden both shoes come flying off. The nervous twitches with her are all over the place. Most people that are innocent, they're not so fidgety, you know.
So on your cash app here,
That's a different one.
on yours, you know, we located some documents that we had some questions about. One of which was this one right here.
What is this? Okay.
This is
Sorry.
a screenshot
Okay.
from your account on March 31st at 23:46, which is 11:46.
Okay. Yep, that's his house.
Okay. So that's what I'm asking about. You said you weren't there since February. Is this
Right.
from March
I
31st?
went down the street and picked up another girl.
That was at his house?
Yes. And she didn't have a ride.
Was the other girl seeing Steve?
Yes.
And who is she?
But she goes by Niche.
Niche?
Yes.
So
But
where did
she
you pick
saw-
her up at?
At the end of the road.
So you didn't pull in his driveway?
No.
You
No.
didn't go in his house?
No.
This was from the cloud,
Okay.
from your old phone.
Okay.
The location that you're telling us doesn't match up. I didn't know exactly what happened, you know.
I sat in the passenger seat and waited for it.
Where?
In the driveway.
In the driveway?
Yeah.
What did you do during that time?
Sat there and talked on the phone and played on it.
Was Stephen with you there?
No. No, he was not there.
Okay, so none of the area checks for the device IDs or anything like that's going to show him being there.
No, he wasn't with me.
Not at the street or anything like that.
Up the street, he went somewhere in Wentzville, but like I didn't connect with him or anything.
Okay. You smoke while you're there?
No. I mean, in the car. Yeah.
So you're telling me you were not in his house?
No, I was in his house since February.
Okay. So you understand that anything that you touch leaves DNA, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's only unique to you?
Mm-hmm. I did not go in that house.
You didn't?
I did not go in that house.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
Because Steve's not here to tell us. Right? So that's the problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the first time I'm actually saying.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm like hearing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
When you bring up Steve's name, it's a, a little laugh. She's thinking hard now. The wheels are really turning in her head. It's the time to really start buckling down on her. We know you're lying, so you need to start being truthful with us.
I'm just telling you that if you're saying you never went in that house at night, the evidence inside that house from your DNA suggests otherwise. You have all his phone text messages, all his text messages, all your messages, all your location data, all the accounts data.
Right, okay.
And consistently just goes back to you. Among everybody who I think had possibly had contact with him during the time frame.
Like you're accusing me.
Okay. So just because someone ends up dying doesn't mean it's a murder. Obviously, we think worse.
Right, no.
When we have evidence, we have to follow the evidence.
No, trust me, I understand.
I would love for you to explain to me what happened and how it happened so that I can understand.
I truthfully don't know.
I don't believe that's true.
I did not go in
Based
that
on the
house.
evidence we have, I can tell you that's not true.
Steve was a funny person. He was always laughing, always smiling, but I felt that he was lonely. He started using other means of dating women, and I told him that lifestyle that he chose at that particular time, that is a dangerous thing. It made no sense at all.
So I just need to understand and be able to reason why you're in the house.
I wasn't.
That's not meshing with the evidence we have. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
I truthfully don't even know what happened. Like,
I believe you do know.
But I don't.
It's very tough to stay patient when the lies start getting circular and they're not changing, and you can't break out of that. It becomes an issue because you're at a dead end.
All right, I'll be right back. You smoke. I'm gonna grab your phone, okay?
Okay.
So at this point, I asked Detective Sergeant Meyer to be part of the interview. He has more of a softer approach. The both of us in there together, maybe she would feel like she had somebody on her side.
I'm sure you guys never talked about this.
No, yeah.
When you went out there at the end of March, beginning of April, and you were with a friend.
Yeah, she, Nessie, my mother, Nessie.
So this gal that was with you, that you drove out to Steve's house, you don't know her real name or anything like that?
No, I don't, no one, no.
So that night that you went out there, how did you get a hold of her? How did she get a hold of you?
She had one of my phones, but so I let her have it that night.
There was ongoing messages between this account back and forth. The last text in that thread said, "I'm going to kill him." They were sent from a text app registered to this Gmail.
Okay.
So who would have sent those?
Like I said, she had my other phone. There was a app, you know, so she could text her clients.
Well, she's not texting.
Right, no, she told me she accidentally messaged him.
So you're saying that's the only possibility, that it was her texting this stuff?
Yeah, because I did not.
And then she rode out there with you.
Right, yeah, she said she had a visit out there. Yes.
Okay.
You understand why it's really important for us to get hold of this nest girl?
Yes, in my life.
Right. So.
My freedom, my kids.
Paige, who was this with you?
That's what I swear, I swear I'm not gonna lie. I'm not lying. Oh my God, I'm fine.
Listen, it's okay. I'm sure there's reasons or understandable reason for what happened that night. I don't know what it is. I need you to help piece it together so we can understand it.
I'm literally telling you what I know. I'm not gonna take the rap for any less.
I hope.
I love my baby. I love my kids. I want my life back.
Your kids need you. And let's get to the truth, okay, Paige?
We need to find the story that actually fits the facts, and that's what we're trying to do. You know what I'm saying? I'll meet you at first.
You understand what he's saying?
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I do. I did not visit with him.
In a setting like that, the table creates a barrier between you and them. So I made a decision to move my chair closer to her. I don't want to be behind the table. I want to open up to her as I want her to open up to me. Here I am. Focus on me. Tell me what happened.
Hey, something happened that night, and we need to figure it out, okay? Hey, you're in the house. Okay? We gotta get past your story, okay? The story's broken. It doesn't fit. That's science talking. That's not me thinking this or him thinking that. That's science, okay? How did you go? What time did you go into the house?
I saw him earlier that day. I popped up and saw him. That's it. I don't. Like during daylight.
Who did you go out there with her?
Myself.
So you went out to Steve's house earlier in the day, and you saw him. What time?
He messaged me actually coming to saying he broke his foot, and there's my phone password. That's why I always message him. You know, I generally phone password. You know, I don't know.
Did Steve, when you were out there, give you anything? Any jewelry, any mementos, any items, any money, anything like that? Did he give you anything when you were there?
No.
Anything at all?
No.
When I was out of the room, we learned that when the investigators initially went to Paige's hotel room, they found several watches. We knew at Steve Wilson's home there was a large jewelry box, which the jewelry was clearly missing out of. And we were able to determine that the watches that were in her room did in fact belong to Steve Wilson.
There's some watches, I guess, in your hotel room?
Yes.
Who are those?
They are in here. Well, I mean, who did...
What do you think the odds of those watches having Steve's DNA on them are?
I'd say pretty high.
Huh?
I'm saying pretty high.
She told me they were in here.
Who's supposed to be in here, dude?
Nested. Fucking 6 days ago when she stopped by.
She stopped by 6 days ago and gave you those watches?
Yeah, she said she's going out of town.
Well, you don't know what town, though.
No, I didn't ask her where she was going or anything, but yeah, she said she was going, like, she said Chicago or Kansas City. You know, she said she was going up that way. But I don't know which one, like, she stopped at.
Obviously, those were lies. You gotta be patient. Let them tell you half-truths until the half-truth becomes a full truth. And we just had to push her over the edge to get her to say it.
I know you're saying that this anonymous nest gave you the watches, but it's just one more of those factors that I'm telling you that when you put it in a line of everything going on and now you have his watches.
Like, I trust, I know, like, I date cops. I don't, the whole street guy, I think that whole life, like, that's never me. That's not me. I'm the game warden. I don't break rules. I don't cover for people. I don't take for no one. I'm not losing my babies for no one.
It looks to me like either you went over there with the intention to kill him, or you went over there with the intention for something else to happen, and it went bad, and he ended up dead. That's what it looks like. One of those two things.
There's something that you're not telling me. Exactly, listen to me. There's definitely something we've been doing this long enough. I can tell when people are not telling us the whole truth. You've been full of half-truths all night long.
I didn't send anything out. I don't know. I really don't. I didn't kill him. I didn't go with it.
You lied to us earlier. You lied to us several different times. And you came out earlier and you said, well, you know what? I was there earlier in the day. That's
right. I did.
Okay. But that's a forever for you to get that little bit of maybe truth out of you.
I don't know how to play the murder. I don't know.
So the real truth here is that if you don't tell us what happened, you're not going to see your babies for
The whole time in the interview, it was a battle to get her to tell anything that was truthful. She's given it a little bit at a time. Eventually, you have to quit with all the niceness and be stern with somebody.
So it'd be murder at this point because nothing can be justified. And what happened? And for murder, you're going to sit down on it. 20 years. Now, you understand the difference between murder, right, and manslaughter. You have to tell us what actually happened in order for us to be able to do anything other than that charge. That's the only charge that fits right now. You've given us nothing. Out there, this man's dead. You have his watches. You're in the house. I mean, like, texting him about, I'm going to kill this guy. Like, it looks like it was completely planned and set up to go murder this dude. If that's not the case, then you better start 100% information because otherwise you sit down on a murder charge. You're not going to see your kids. Like, that's the only thing you can do.
You say there's no difference between anything.
There's a big difference. What do you think?
There's not.
Oh, absolutely, there is. A murder charge is life in prison with no probation.
Yeah, the years you serve. That's the whole difference.
Yeah, and manslaughter people that get 3 years. It beats the hell out of 20 with no probation. But what do you think would happen if you get convicted of murder? Like, something happened, and the only way out of it, and the only way to see your kids again within the next 20 years is going to be legitimate, tell the truth, so we can get it figured out. Without that, it's 20 years.
There's remorse. Or there's nothing.
And you keep talking about your kids and that, like, this is your opportunity to be able to see your kids, to be not in a mass security prison somewhere far away, to not be locked up for 20, 30 years.
Things would happen after. And I don't want any more. I want the truth.
We're getting somewhere real close now. breaking her down a little bit. And at that point, I noticed she really starts rubbing on her wrists and her arms, and one spot in particular that appeared to have been a cut. So I call her out on that.
What happened to your arm, Paige?
Did he do that to you? Did he make that mark on your knife, or what? What happened? How'd your arm get cut?
I protected myself.
Okay.
What happened?
I've been hurting for money lately. And so I went to go take a visit.
Was it nighttime or daytime? I'm sorry.
It was at night.
At night. Were you by yourself or were you with you?
I was by myself.
So what happened when you got there?
I walked in. He gave me a hug. I don't know what I'm going to go back. I sat there on the couch for a while. We went upstairs and I wouldn't get undressed. And like you told me, like, come over here, you know, you send me $100. Like I said, I don't do anything for $100. Like he was like sitting on his bed and he's taking his boot off and I was standing. And then he got mad at me. I should have turned around. I should have walked away. But I stood there when he yelled at me, "You bitch," and came toward, like, he grabbed one of his knives and he came towards me and I put my arm up and I got that cut and I grabbed my out of my pocket. I don't know. Like, I know, but I don't know. Like, what happened? I don't. Like, I never.
He came at you and cut you, and you pulled your knife.
I pulled mine out, and like when I pulled mine out, like I hit, like, you know, not like accidentally because I was like defending myself, but like I hit him like on the side of his neck, and
like this or like this?
No, like I. So like he came and I was like and like I turned and mine was in my hand and I went like, you know, like to backlash like at him.
Backhand?
Yeah, like to, you know, like I just grabbed it and, you know, I was grabbing my arm and I was like, no, you know, like freaked out. And I don't even know, so like then him, he came and I was like, I went like this way and oh my gosh, because like
Did you like go towards him to get him, or were you like away, or?
No, like I stayed crouched down. I crouched up and protected myself like this, and it was just like closed eyes, just like stabbed, you know. And then I like peeked, and he was just like looking at me, you know, really briefly. It just all like flashed.
Scared you?
Yeah.
We know how Steve Wilson was murdered. He was stabbed in the back with a violent force. Clearly, as she acted it out, it does not fit the evidence. She made some backhanded stabbing motion gingerly towards him. Well, we know that's not possible, given where the stab wounds were located on his body.
It was a freak out panic. I
check him or anything? Like check
no,
his pulse or
no.
Try and wake him up, shake him?
No.
Could you tell he was dead though?
He looked like it. I don't, like, it was like it all happened so quick. I wanted to call, but like,
Did you think about calling the police or the ambulance or anything?
Yeah.
When you're worried about getting in trouble?
I don't, I'm sorry. We should have called it. No, we should have.
When something accidental happens, you're going to stick around, make sure somebody's going to get the help they need.
Obviously, I didn't believe it was self-defense. Those were lies to, minimize your involvement in any kind of crime.
And what happened after that?
I left, and then I left, and the watches he had stuff like backed up like on the side or whatever. I know some of my blood got on that bag from like when I turned, and that's why I grabbed the bag.
The bag with the watches.
Yeah, and took it with me.
Take anything else with you?
I threw a phone. Yeah. With the knife.
Where are the clothes you were wearing?
I threw them away.
Where at?
In a dumpster downtown.
Did you talk to anybody else about this?
No, I've been drinking a lot.
What were you worried about? For your reasons, you said you were going to call the police, but then you were worried.
Because it was a murder. I know. That's all I thought.
He knows he's got her on the ropes. You're so close. You're so close to telling the truth.
It was like it all happened so quick.
Get it off your chest, though.
I'm sure it weighed heavy on you. Especially like you said, you kind of had a soft spot for him because you felt sorry for him and everything.
Like, I really did, though.
I believe you.
It's my nature, like, compassion. Like, I help people. That's what I
Like I said, we're clearing it up. We're telling the truth now. We're on the right track.
Yeah. Like, he doesn't know unless you guys told him.
There's still some inconsistencies in your story, and I appreciate that you are, you've taken that leap, okay? You're telling us stuff, but there's some things that still don't add up.
Okay.
So I want you just to backtrack to where you're up in the room and tell me exactly what happened in that room. No extra, no bull, just straight up honest truth, please.
I would have never hurt him, hurt anyone unless it's just me myself. I wouldn't. And he posted on one of the indicator sites, saying I'm a robber, that I stole from him and all this, and all the girls were calling me and all that, and I was losing a lot of money. And so, I initially went there to get him to take the post down.
Is it still up?
No, he took it down.
Oh, he did. Why you over there?
Mm-hmm.
My concern is that you get there and you text that I'm going to kill him. And then you go upstairs with Steve and he's leaning over the bed.
Well, I initially helped him with the boot.
Okay. And then bend down in some way because the way the wounds are and how his hands work, like this, like you're obviously behind him and stabbed him.
Right, because when I pulled out my hook, like I said, I
understand
nicked him or whatever.
but I'm telling you that
I know.
based on this and the angle where he was and sitting and how you describe the situation doesn't match. Doesn't match the wounds, it doesn't match the force necessary to be generated. It seems more like you would have been maybe kneeling on the bed behind him, but just stabbed him.
I wasn't I wasn't directly behind him. No, I mean my armor, so that's a little bit of adrenaline rush.
So you're still thinking that he made that cut on your arm at this time?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's still the story you're keeping?
She's making the story up the way she wants to tell the story, not how it really happened. We've got a confession that she stabbed him. Boom. That's what you needed.
We've got enough on you. We're going to take you to jail, and we're going to get charges on you for homicide.
Nothing else in your pockets? Just get a
I had some information from Paige that Sydney had driven her during the night that Steve was murdered. Because Sydney Bias was her pimp, we thought maybe he had forced her to handle the situation in whatever fashion she could.
You know what we're talking about?
Why would any of this have something to do with me?
Because it has to do with Paige. And you and Paige have been seen together quite a bit.
So Paige killed the man. That was y'all telling me she killed the man?
It looks that way. She said that you gave her a ride to get Nisi. They went out to this man's house, and that you weren't there, but you were in the area.
No. That's not what, she couldn't say that.
That's what it sounded like her exact words. You weren't there, but you were in the area.
Okay, how I wasn't there, but no.
That's what I'm asking. How are you not there, but in the
I'm
area?
trying to tell you, I don't know nothing about nothing, man. This is what I'm trying to tell you. These people I don't even know.
Okay, let me ask you about something you will know.
I think I know.
Because we had you on the camera at the hotel, and she was telling us that you guys had left that night together on March 31st in your car. Shortly after that, she ended up at Steve's house. I know that because I got evidence of that. My question is, were you with her or not?
What is this evidence? Hell no, I don't even know. Listen,
I'm not saying you're not.
I don't even know this person. That's what I'm telling you.
Okay, I just want to be clear that you did not drive her to that man's house on March 31st at nighttime.
No.
Sydney did ultimately let me look into his phone and where his location data would have been saved. And it was just inconclusive. So we decided to go ahead and let him go.
All right, man, time to go.
There's no evidence to show that he was there or had any involvement.
We were able to determine she acted alone.
Cool Blue 100, please. Cool Blue.
She took Mr. Wilson's life, and she's got to pay her time for that.
There's a sense of relief. That confession was earned. You can never bring nobody back, but you can do what you can to put the person that did it in prison for as long as you can.
I was glad that she was caught. It's hurtful when you lose someone, but when it's senseless, it's even worse. It hurts more than just the person that has left the world. Steve will always have that special place in my heart regardless. He's always going to be a good friend to me.
It was a quiet Tuesday evening in Columbus, Ohio, 2007, when the first trace of something wrong slipped into the neighborhood like a shadow moving across a street lamp. The streets were calm, familiar, a rhythm of domestic life humming in the background, children playing in yards, cars passing in measured intervals. But in the small apartment at the corner of Hillcrest Avenue, the air was thick with tension long before anyone would name it. In that unit, Emma Larkin had vanished. No screaming, no confrontation, just an absence that would ripple through families, police precincts, and the city itself for over a decade. When the alarm was raised, the words were simple, chilling, "She's gone. I don't know where." Those 6 words became the seed of a storm, a cold case that would fester in law enforcement files, community speculation, and the fragile minds of friends and relatives who refused to accept that someone could simply disappear without explanation. From the moment officers stepped into her apartment, something felt off. Emma's belongings were untouched, the door locked from the inside, a half-empty coffee cup on the counter, steam long gone, the scent faint but lingering. Nothing appeared to have been taken. Her laptop sat open, a paused screen illuminating a stack of papers that held plans, appointments, reminders, ordinary life frozen midstream. And yet, the space was hollow, as if she had evaporated, leaving only an outline of herself behind. Detectives noted small anomalies: a chair slightly moved, a notebook with a page flipped in an unusual direction, a faint mark on the windowsill that suggested a presence unseen. Every detail, though mundane, became a thread, a possible key in the knot of mystery that was only beginning to unravel. Colleagues described her as reliable, precise, someone who held routine like armor. Friends recounted dinners, late-night calls, coffee meetups, the minutiae of life that suddenly seemed like breadcrumb trails leading to nowhere. Her parents, living 2 states away, clutched at these stories, feeling helpless and suspended in disbelief. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And as the initial shock faded, the cold reality of ambiguity set in. Emma Larkin's disappearance was no ordinary missing person case. The absence itself became the crime, an intangible wound that refused to close. The police file began to grow in layers: witness statements, neighborhood canvases, surveillance footage from nearby stores, traffic cameras, gas stations. Nothing conclusive. Each lead was a fragment that refused to coalesce. Neighbors remembered seeing a dark sedan idling outside at odd hours, but no one could identify the driver. A delivery man recalled Emma speaking briefly to someone on the phone, a man with a voice that didn't leave a trace. Small details accumulated: footprints in the mud by a side alley, a single thread caught on a fence, an unidentifiable scent lingering near a dumpster. Each was catalogued meticulously, photographed, analyzed, yet nothing definitively pointed to a suspect. The case quickly settled into a limbo, a frozen puzzle. Detectives began tracing patterns in Emma's life, attempting to reconstruct days leading up to her disappearance. Employment records, bank statements, and social interactions were examined for anomalies, unusual transactions, or threats. Her phone records, meticulously reviewed, revealed no unusual calls, no hidden connections, no last-minute communications that suggested a plan or a warning. Her social circle, once considered ordinary, was scrutinized with an intensity that felt invasive, necessary, and exhausting. Friends were interviewed repeatedly. Co-workers recounted shifts with astonishing precision. No one could recall any hint that danger loomed. And yet, the absence persisted, a stark contradiction to the meticulous normalcy of her world. Time did not heal the ambiguity, it sharpened it. By 2008, the Columbus Police Department had officially classified Emma Larkin's disappearance as a cold case. Files were shelved in cabinets, digital copies encrypted and stored, investigators reassigned to other cases. And yet, the community refused to move on. Flyers were posted, neighborhood watches organized, and local media kept the story alive. Tips flowed sporadically, often vague or unverifiable. Some suggested sightings in distant cities, others hinted at potential motives involving acquaintances, strangers, or random misfortune. Every thread was pursued, analyzed, dismissed, archived, and yet each added a layer of psychological weight to the people still hoping for answers. In the background, detectives who had initially worked the case began to notice patterns, subtle, almost imperceptible, across different missing person reports in surrounding counties. Similar vehicles spotted, similar behavioral inconsistencies in reported sightings, small but recurring details in witness statements. It was a pattern that did not cohere into a solution, not yet. Investigators spoke quietly among themselves, speculating, theorizing, connecting dots that only became visible when spread across time and geography. They began calling it the shadow thread, an untraceable connection that whispered at the edges of logic, hinting at a presence orchestrating disappearance with patience and subtlety. Meanwhile, the media continued to frame the case as emblematic of unsolved mysteries, a cautionary tale about vulnerability in suburban streets. Headlines screamed, "Missing woman sparks fear in quiet neighborhood, Ohio cold case, 2007 disappearance still unexplained, community grapples with the vanishing of Emma Larkin." The language itself became a mirror of the fear: cold case, vanished, unexplained, all words that reinforced both mystery and dread. Families drove slowly past the apartment building, each glance a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. Community meetings sometimes erupted into heated discussions about safety, policing, and suspicion. No one could definitively say what happened, and that uncertainty became a weight that hovered, unrelenting. By 2010, advancements in forensic technology began to breathe new life into the cold case. DNA techniques had evolved, digital footprints, once inaccessible, became traceable. Detectives revisited old evidence, the thread from the fence, the footprint molds, the partial fingerprints on the windowsill. Each item, previously a fragment, was now a potential clue. Analysts worked tirelessly, combing through the minutiae, testing and retesting, hoping that a combination of old evidence and new science might finally illuminate the darkness that had swallowed Emma Larkin. The files that once seemed impenetrable slowly began to glow under the scrutiny of modern technology. Witness interviews were re-examined with heightened scrutiny. Cognitive psychologists were consulted to assess memory reliability, subtle biases, and overlooked consistencies. The faint recollection of a neighbor noticing a vehicle, the precise timing of a delivery driver's route, the echo of a casual remark now formed patterns previously invisible. Investigators reconstructed timelines with meticulous care, layering environmental data, weather reports, street lighting, and digital tracking to create a map of potential movement. Slowly, the invisible lines began to converge, producing a shape that hinted at possibility without yet revealing the truth. Throughout it all, the emotional toll on the Larkin family was relentless. Parents and siblings navigated hope and despair in cycles, each tip, each re-examination of evidence reigniting memory and trauma. Friends who had once visited casually now maintained a delicate vigilance, alert to every sound, every report, every unverified rumor. The psychological impact of a cold case does not fade with time. It settles, infiltrates daily life, and shapes perception in ways both subtle and profound. Emma's absence became a constant presence, a quiet shadow that informed decisions, conversations, and routines. By 2013, a breakthrough emerged in the form of a faint lead, a partial license plate recorded on a traffic camera near a warehouse district days after Emma vanished. The vehicle description matched accounts from multiple witnesses. Investigators pored over DMV records, cross-referencing traffic violations, rental histories, and vehicle sales. For the first time in 6 years, a tangible, traceable connection surfaced, a thread that could be followed, mapped, and interrogated. Hope surged cautiously, as detectives knew from experience that even promising leads could collapse under scrutiny. Interviews intensified. Detectives focused on potential suspects who had previously seemed peripheral. Alibis were verified, dismissed, and cross-checked. A profile began to form, someone meticulous, patient, aware of observation patterns, able to operate unnoticed yet consistently connected to the scene. Behavioral analysts were consulted, constructing a psychological silhouette of a person who could orchestrate a disappearance without immediate detection. The complexity of human behavior, once a source of frustration, now provided guidance, allowing investigators to prioritize avenues previously ignored. The community remained both anxious and engaged. Local media amplified every development, every tip, and every minor revelation. Neighborhoods hosted informal watch meetings, residents revisited streets, and conversations drifted toward speculation tempered with cautious optimism. The cold case, once a frozen narrative, now began to thaw under combined pressure from investigators, technology, and the persistence of those unwilling to let ambiguity define the story. The tension, palpable and almost tangible, hung over the city like the stillness before a storm, a quiet forewarning that revelation, when it arrived, would be as shocking as it was transformative. And so the files continued to grow, thick with annotations, evidence updates, forensic reports, and psychological assessments. Investigators, driven by professional duty and personal investment, refused to allow the cold case to remain unresolved. Every hour, every minute spent reviewing photographs, notes, and timelines was a step toward clarity, a chance to reclaim the narrative that time had stolen. The absence of Emma Larkin remained a haunting constant, yet the persistent human effort to illuminate the truth created a pulse beneath the still surface of mystery, a heartbeat of possibility that refused to be extinguished. The following months unfolded like a taut wire stretched across time, every lead tugging detectives closer to a truth both elusive and terrifying. Columbus hummed with its usual rhythm, unaware of the silent storm brewing in the background, in offices stacked with files and laboratories humming with machines scanning DNA strands, fingerprints, and microscopic fibers. Every corner of the city, every intersection, every streetlight now seemed to carry potential meaning. Emma Larkin's absence had turned ordinary spaces into loci of anxiety, ordinary moments into clues frozen in the amber of memory. Detectives retraced her steps, not just through physical spaces, but through the intangible network of human interactions, the web of social contacts, casual conversations, fleeting glances, all now data points in a meticulous reconstruction. Reconstructing Emma's last known day became an exercise in precision. She had left her apartment early, coffee in hand, dressed in familiar routine, no indication that the world was about to shift irreversibly. Surveillance footage from convenience stores captured fragments of movement, blurred faces, cars that passed and vanished into temporal anonymity. Traffic cameras caught fleeting moments of motion, frames just barely enough to suggest a shape, a vehicle, a direction. In isolation, these fragments were meaningless, but layered together, they began to suggest rhythm, pattern, intention. Detectives mapped every location she visited, every street she walked, every person she briefly encountered, reconstructing a life interrupted midstream. Neighbors provided recollections that were both mundane and haunting. A man walking his dog remembered seeing Emma pause at a corner, glance over her shoulder, then continue, unaware that her next steps would be swallowed by uncertainty. A child riding a bicycle recalled a strange car parked at the far end of the block, dark and unmarked, engine silent but presence ominous. These small observations, often dismissed in the immediacy of daily life, became central threads in the growing tapestry of the investigation. Each statement was verified, cross-referenced, and plotted on timelines, revealing gaps, overlaps, and a faint but consistent pattern that hinted at a watcher moving just beyond perception. By late 2010, forensic technology had advanced enough to re-examine evidence that had once been considered inconclusive. Microscopic fibers from Emma's apartment, previously catalogued but unanalyzed, were now tested against expansive databases. Residue on the windowsill, faint and easily overlooked, was subjected to chemical and DNA analysis. Every possibility, no matter how improbable, was pursued. Analysts pored over every fiber, every partial fingerprint, every trace of DNA that could offer even the smallest glimpse of the person who had orchestrated her disappearance. The process was painstaking, methodical, exhausting, yet the investigators knew that precision was the only route to revelation. Amid the technical work, human intuition played an equally vital role. Behavioral specialists consulted on the case, constructed psychological profiles, attempting to identify traits that could explain both opportunity and motivation. They hypothesized someone meticulous, patient, aware of surveillance, yet confident enough to manipulate routine without drawing immediate attention. Patterns suggested calculated observation, someone who could integrate seamlessly into a neighborhood, a city, without arousing suspicion. The profile, once theoretical, began to intersect with tangible evidence, offering a bridge between forensic data and lived experience, between theory and reality. The cold case exerted its pull not just on investigators, but on the community. Local media maintained pressure, framing the story with headlines designed to provoke curiosity and fear. Still missing, Emma Larkin's vanishing haunts Ohio. 11 years later, Columbus cold case persists, mystery deepens, clues surface in long unsolved disappearance. The language shaped perception, amplifying the tension that residents felt each time they walked familiar streets or passed the apartment complex where her life had been interrupted. Parents instructed children in caution without naming fear, neighbors discussed details without full comprehension, and each day the story lingered like a low hum, an unbroken chord vibrating beneath normalcy. By early 2012, a combination of old evidence and new technology produced the first breakthrough in years, a partial match of fibers found on a discarded jacket in the warehouse district. It matched fibers recovered from Emma's apartment, an unexpected connection that suggested proximity, contact, presence. Investigators mapped movement patterns, identified potential witnesses, and retraced deliveries, appointments, and travel routes of individuals connected to the warehouse. Surveillance footage from surrounding businesses was reanalyzed with modern software capable of enhancing previously indiscernible details, the reflection of a license plate, a silhouette at the wrong hour, a figure moving against expectation. The pieces, once disparate, now began to vibrate with potential significance. Witnesses were revisited. Someone who had been interviewed early in the investigation now recalled an anomalous encounter, a stranger offering help, a vague conversation, a hesitation that felt inconsequential at the time but, retrospectively, carried weight. Detectives documented every nuance, aware that memory is both fragile and persistent, that a fleeting remark years prior could suddenly take on urgent meaning. They cross-checked statements with new leads, aligning recollections with patterns from surveillance and forensic analysis. Slowly, a portrait of movement, interaction, and opportunity began to emerge, shadowed but perceptible. The Larkin family continued to experience the psychological toll of absence, compounded now by the flickering hope of potential resolution. Each breakthrough brought a mixture of relief and dread, the knowledge that revelation could simultaneously heal and devastate. Friends who had lingered near the investigation offered support and attended meetings, their voices both comfort and echo, a reminder of shared concern, shared grief, shared uncertainty. The community's collective consciousness remained tethered to the unresolved, and each minor discovery intensified the unspoken tension, the realization that someone had orchestrated disappearance with deliberate care, leaving behind traces that were both maddeningly subtle and yet unmistakably present. By mid-2013, investigators identified a suspect of interest through vehicle tracking, corroborated witness statements, and forensic alignment. The individual's lifestyle, daily movements, and historical connections to the apartment complex matched patterns projected by behavioral analysis. Though circumstantial, the weight of accumulated evidence created a portrait impossible to ignore. Surveillance footage placed the suspect near key locations at critical times, fiber evidence suggested contact, and behavioral tendencies aligned with calculated observation. Yet, for all the emerging coherence, absolute proof remained just out of reach, a specter dancing on the edge of certainty. Tension escalated within the investigative team. Detectives conducted interviews under controlled conditions, probing reactions, noting microexpressions, inconsistencies in timeline recollection, and subtle emotional cues. Polygraph tests were administered, not as definitive proof but as tools for insight into stress responses and honesty under pressure. Every detail was catalogued, every anomaly weighed against established patterns. Analysts worked around the clock, parsing mountains of data, seeking the faint signal within the noise, aware that the culmination of years of uncertainty hinged on the smallest, most precise observation. Meanwhile, the psychological impact on the neighborhood was undeniable. Residents reported heightened vigilance, increased security measures, and subconscious anxiety. Children were guided to remain within sight of caregivers, doors were double-checked, and conversations about safety became routine. The fabric of everyday life, once casual and unremarkable, now carried the imprint of the unsolved. Neighborhood streets seemed narrower, shadows longer, and the hum of normalcy threaded with tension. Even in public spaces, there was a subtle shift, a recognition that hidden within familiarity could lie unseen threat, a consciousness sharpened by absence and uncertainty. By late 2014, forensic advances allowed investigators to identify a partial DNA sequence from fibers collected near Emma's apartment that corresponded to the suspect's genetic profile. This breakthrough transformed speculation into actionable lead. Surveillance, eyewitness accounts, behavioral profiling, and forensic alignment now converged into a coherent investigative trajectory. Detectives intensified focus, narrowing potential locations, revisiting old witnesses, and reconstructing interaction timelines with precision. Each day brought incremental clarity, each step forward steeped in anticipation and caution, as if the city itself held its breath in silent vigil. The case, now more than 7 years old, had evolved into a testament to persistence. Cold case units were reinforced, analysts collaborated across departments, and experts in behavioral psychology, forensic science, and digital investigation converged. Every piece of evidence, no matter how seemingly minor, was integrated into an overarching schema. The suspect's known movements, historical behavior patterns, and environmental footprints were plotted meticulously, revealing gaps, overlaps, and predictive pathways. Investigators understood that patience, precision, and an unwavering commitment to detail were the only routes to illumination. Community engagement persisted. Local news outlets reported cautiously, balancing the need for public awareness with the integrity of investigation. Forums and social media became repositories for discussion, speculation, and shared memory. Residents recounted anecdotes once considered peripheral, anecdotes that now gained significance. The narrative of disappearance, anxiety, and potential resolution evolved in parallel with procedural developments, creating a shared psychological space where hope and fear coexisted. The town, simultaneously observer and participant, remained suspended in the tension between absence and emerging clarity. As the calendar turned toward 2015, investigators finally achieved a breakthrough in evidence synthesis. Surveillance data, eyewitness statements, fiber analysis, and DNA alignment coalesced into a cohesive timeline implicating the suspect in a manner both precise and circumstantial. Investigators prepared for interviews, search warrants, and controlled questioning, aware that one misstep could dissolve the fragile convergence of proof. The air in the precinct, heavy with anticipation, reflected the stakes. After 8 years of uncertainty, the edge of revelation was palpable, sharp, and imminent. The cold case, once frozen in procedural stasis, now trembled on the cusp of resolution. Years of painstaking observation, relentless inquiry, and analytical rigor had produced a pathway from uncertainty to possibility. Emma Larkin's absence, the silent force that had shaped lives and streets, was finally giving way to narrative, evidence, and potential justice. Yet the shadow of what remained unknown persisted, a reminder that the final step in uncovering truth is often the most delicate, the most dangerous, and the most emotionally charged. By early 2015, the investigation had taken on a life of its own, a pulse beating steadily beneath the surface of Columbus, threading through precincts, offices, and neighborhoods with invisible tension. The suspect's name had become central in briefing notes, files, and quiet conversations in dimly lit interrogation rooms. The team of detectives, analysts, and behavioral specialists had spent years assembling a mosaic of evidence, layering the faintest clues over each other until a pattern emerged from the fog of ambiguity. But patterns, no matter how compelling, are fragile. One misread detail, one overlooked anomaly, and the tenuous trajectory could collapse entirely. And yet, hope, patient and deliberate, persisted. Detectives revisited the suspect's known history, tracing movements across time, geography, and context. Surveillance footage, once grainy and indecipherable, was now enhanced with software capable of extracting nuances invisible to the naked eye, shadows, partial reflections, subtle gestures. The suspect's vehicle was spotted repeatedly in locations lining Emma's last known path, the same dark sedan described by multiple neighbors years earlier. Analysts charted each instance, cross-referencing timestamps, environmental conditions, and potential interactions with Emma or others connected to her. The sequence suggested deliberate observation, careful planning, a patient orchestration that had eluded detection for years. Every minor witness recollection was revisited under rigorous scrutiny. A neighbor's fleeting sighting of a man with a backpack near the apartment complex, initially dismissed as incidental, was now aligned with vehicle tracking and fiber evidence, forming a line of temporal and spatial convergence. A delivery driver's offhand comment about a suspicious man loitering gained weight when cross-referenced with surveillance footage showing the suspect nearby at corresponding times. The human mind, fallible yet persistent, had inadvertently preserved fragments of reality that, when reassembled with modern tools, became a lattice of implication. Emma's social connections were examined in parallel. Phone records, once sparse and minimally revealing, were now digitally mapped to visualize patterns of contact. Unexplained gaps, calls of short duration, repeated but minor interactions, all were scrutinized, correlated with other evidence, and plotted for anomalies. Investigators discovered small deviations in routine, fleeting interactions with acquaintances whose relevance had previously gone unnoticed. These deviations, subtle as they were, suggested the possibility of intentional manipulation, the careful orchestration of perception and presence that made detection difficult. The cold case exerted a gravitational pull on the entire investigative team. Detectives, some of whom had aged visibly since the initial disappearance, operated in a state of heightened focus, balancing fatigue, hope, and the moral weight of pursuing truth. Sleep was rationed, shifts extended, yet every moment was invested in decoding the intricate puzzle laid out before them. Behavioral specialists provided guidance on likely suspect behavior, predicting reactions, stress responses, and patterns of evasion. Analysts translated physical evidence into behavioral hypotheses, constructing a feedback loop of insight that continually refined investigative focus. Public interest remained high. Local media maintained pressure with headlines emphasizing both urgency and mystery. Ohio cold case update, 8 years of silence, suspect emerges in long unsolved disappearance, community on edge as investigation reignites. Residents were alert, eyes scanning familiar streets, aware that the narrative of absence had now begun to intersect with tangible possibility. Social media buzzed with speculation, discussion, and fragmented reports, some accurate, others misleading. The town existed in a liminal space, suspended between uncertainty and revelation, where every detail, however minor, seemed imbued with significance. By mid-2015, the investigators had reconstructed the suspect's movements with remarkable precision. GPS data, surveillance footage, and witness statements converged into a timeline suggesting repeated proximity to Emma's apartment before and after her disappearance. The dark sedan became a focal point, traced across multiple streets, parking lots, and surveillance zones. Investigators noted a pattern: the vehicle was never parked conspicuously, never idling in a location that would draw attention, always moving just beyond perception yet close enough to facilitate observation. This subtle orchestration hinted at experience, patience, and an understanding of human and environmental behavior that allowed concealment within familiarity. Investigators intensified interviews with the suspect's known associates. Friends, co-workers, and acquaintances were asked to recall minutiae, unusual routines, changes in behavior, unexplained absences. One co-worker remembered the suspect mentioning Emma in passing, a casual remark that had seemed inconsequential but now suggested awareness of her schedule. Another acquaintance recalled seeing the suspect return home late at night, carrying items never fully explained. Each recollection, no matter how minor, was added to the matrix of evidence, catalogued, cross-referenced, and analyzed. Over time, the accumulated weight of indirect connections began to form a compelling narrative of proximity, intent, and opportunity. Parallel to witness interviews, forensic analysis advanced with unprecedented rigor. Fibers collected years prior were re-examined under high-resolution microscopy, revealing microscopic characteristics that matched fibers from the suspect's clothing and vehicle interior. Trace residues, once considered inconclusive, were tested against expanded chemical and DNA databases. Even the minutiae of dust, pollen, and environmental particulates were analyzed to determine movement and location correlations. This meticulous process, painstaking and exhaustive, transformed decades-old evidence into actionable insight, breathing life into what had been dormant for years. Behavioral specialists constructed detailed profiles to predict potential patterns of interaction. The suspect's psychological traits, meticulous planning, patience, careful observation, and ability to integrate seamlessly into normal routines, were considered in tandem with forensic evidence. Patterns emerged: times of day, preferred routes, and environmental awareness aligned with the observed anomalies surrounding Emma's disappearance. Investigators began to anticipate behavior, enabling controlled surveillance and targeted questioning without alerting the suspect to their focus. The interplay of psychology and physical evidence created a bridge between abstract theory and concrete proof. Throughout this period, the Larkin family remained in a state of suspended anxiety. Every minor revelation carried immense emotional weight, alternating between hope and dread. Parents and siblings attended meetings with investigators, reviewed timelines, and contributed personal knowledge that occasionally illuminated overlooked details. Friends who had remained close to Emma maintained vigilance, providing support while navigating their own emotional burden. The human dimension of the case, the lived experience of absence, was inseparable from the procedural dimension, a reminder that cold cases are measured not only in forensic data but in the psychic imprint they leave on communities. In late 2015, a pivotal breakthrough arrived. Digital enhancement of traffic and surveillance footage, combined with witness correlation, placed the suspect in proximity to Emma's apartment within a critical time window. The match was compelling: vehicle identification, movement pattern, and behavioral alignment converged. Investigators cross-referenced every prior lead, every fiber, every fragment of observation, confirming consistency with the profile constructed over years. The convergence was extraordinary, a culmination of persistence, technology, human memory, and analytical rigor. Simultaneously, investigators revisited environmental data, lighting conditions, pedestrian patterns, seasonal variations, and incidental events on the day of Emma's disappearance. Small details, such as a minor road construction project, streetlight outages, and the timing of neighborhood traffic, now held significance. These previously overlooked factors provided context, suggesting both opportunity and concealment. Investigators reconstructed the environment with forensic precision, generating scenarios consistent with observed evidence and behavioral predictions. Every variable was considered, every hypothesis tested. Community awareness remained intense. Local news captured the subtle escalation in investigation, highlighting both the advances and the lingering uncertainty. Residents spoke cautiously, aware that revelation might soon occur. Conversations in coffee shops, workplaces, and social gatherings included speculation tempered by the sobering knowledge that a real human life was involved. Neighborhoods felt charged, alert, as if the physical space itself had absorbed the tension generated over 8 years. The collective psyche, shaped by prolonged ambiguity, now awaited closure, a resolution capable of both relief and shock. As the year closed, the investigation entered a decisive phase. Controlled surveillance was initiated, following predicted patterns of movement derived from behavioral analysis and forensic correlation. Every action, every route, every deviation from routine was recorded and assessed. Analysts monitored data streams, cross-referencing real-time movement with historical patterns. The net of observation tightened, positioning law enforcement in a strategic advantage without alerting the suspect. The culmination of years of methodical work was approaching the threshold where theory and evidence could finally intersect decisively. Despite the technical and procedural advancements, uncertainty remained a constant companion. Detectives were aware that circumstantial evidence, no matter how compelling, required corroboration. Every fiber, every observation, every behavioral inference was treated as part of a larger mosaic, requiring validation before action could be taken. The weight of responsibility was immense. After years of absence, years of speculation, the community, the family, and the investigative team demanded resolution, yet the truth could not be rushed. Patience, precision, and rigor remained the only safeguards against error, misinterpretation, or misstep. By the end of 2015, the cold case, long dormant, had been reanimated by the synergy of human persistence, forensic advancement, behavioral insight, and technological enhancement. The evidence, once scattered and fragmentary, now formed a lattice of implications surrounding the suspect. Investigators had positioned themselves at the nexus of observation and action, aware that the next steps, interviews, warrants, controlled confrontation, would determine whether decades of uncertainty could finally yield to revelation. Emma Larkin's absence, long a void, now intersected with a trajectory toward resolution, the edges of clarity gradually encroaching on years of darkness. The dawn of 2016 broke over Columbus like any other day, yet beneath the calm streets and everyday routines, an unseen tension gripped the city. Detectives had established a pattern of the suspect's movements, aligning historical evidence with real-time surveillance. Cameras installed near the apartment complex, street corners, and potential routes were feeding continuous streams of data to a command center where analysts monitored every frame, every shadow, every anomaly. The cold case had evolved into a live, high-stakes operation. Each movement, each subtle gesture, each fleeting encounter was scrutinized, calculated, catalogued, and anticipated. The suspect's habits, once only partially understood, were now under relentless observation. Behavioral specialists had predicted routines, responses to stress, and environmental awareness with uncanny accuracy. Surveillance confirmed patterns: the suspect's tendency to take certain routes at specific times, a preference for less visible streets, a calculated rhythm to daily actions designed to minimize detection. The same meticulousness that had enabled years of evasion now became the investigator's advantage, a predictable consistency masking years of previous concealment. Every detail of behavior became a clue, every deviation a potential trigger for engagement. Investigators had also re-examined Emma's last known interactions in unprecedented depth. Phone records, emails, and social media activity were mapped against the suspect's movements. Small anomalies emerged: a missed call, a brief text, a deleted message, all previously overlooked but now suggesting potential points of contact or observation. Analysts traced virtual and physical spaces simultaneously, merging digital footprints with environmental data, creating a multidimensional reconstruction of Emma's final hours. The goal was singular: to understand, with precision, the intersection of opportunity and presence that had enabled her disappearance. By mid-2016, the team had also leveraged environmental forensics in innovative ways. Microscopic dust particles, pollen residues, and chemical traces from the apartment and suspect's vehicle were analyzed to determine patterns of movement and environmental exposure. Fibers recovered from Emma's clothing were now linked definitively to materials found in the suspect's possessions. This evidence, once considered inconclusive or peripheral, had been re-examined with modern methodologies, producing connections that previous generations of technology could not confirm. Each layer of evidence reinforced the broader narrative of proximity, observation, and potential culpability. Witness testimony continued to play a pivotal role. Neighbors, delivery personnel, and casual passers-by were re-interviewed with refined questions, designed to elicit detail without leading answers. Human memory, malleable yet persistent, began to reveal subtle truths previously obscured by time or inattention. One neighbor, recalling a man standing by a parked vehicle at odd hours, now provided specific descriptions that aligned with surveillance images. Another witness described hearing a conversation in passing, previously dismissed as unrelated, but now resonant in context. These human fragments, once scattered, were now interlocking pieces of a complex mosaic. Meanwhile, the Larkin family existed in a liminal state between hope and fear. Each minor advance in the case sent waves of relief tempered with apprehension. The psychological weight of nearly a decade without resolution had left deep scars, and the anticipation of imminent confrontation carried its own emotional burden. Family members attended strategy meetings, reviewed timelines, and offered personal insight into Emma's routines and habits. Their lived experience of absence provided investigators with an understanding of patterns and behavior that no surveillance camera or chemical analysis could replicate. The human element remained irreplaceable in the pursuit of truth. By late 2016, investigators had achieved a critical convergence. Surveillance data, witness testimony, behavioral profiling, and forensic evidence collectively identified a location where the suspect's presence aligned consistently with the timeline of Emma's disappearance. Patterns of movement suggested calculated opportunity, routes chosen to avoid detection, proximity maintained to maximize control, environmental awareness leveraged to remain unnoticed. The investigators recognized the significance. All strands of evidence were now pointing to a cohesive scenario that could be tested through controlled intervention. Operational planning intensified. Teams were briefed on precision timing, tactical positioning, and potential contingencies. Every step was choreographed to maintain integrity of observation while minimizing risk. Behavioral predictions were integrated into operational strategy, anticipating the suspect's likely responses to surveillance and questioning. The city's ordinary rhythm continued above, unaware of the meticulous orchestration unfolding below. The cold case had shifted from historical reconstruction to active, strategic engagement, and every moment of anticipation heightened the tension among those tasked with action. As the investigation neared this critical stage, anomalies persisted. Minor inconsistencies in witness recollection, gaps in surveillance coverage, and environmental variables required constant recalibration. Investigators remained cautious. Premature assumptions could compromise years of work. Every fiber, every reflection, every fragment of evidence was re-evaluated in light of the emerging scenario. The team's awareness of uncertainty did not hinder momentum, it sharpened focus, reinforcing the need for precision in every measure. In parallel, community awareness subtly intensified. Local media reported cautiously on potential progress. Cold case update. Leads suggest new breakthrough. Long unsolved disappearance may be near resolution. Residents hold breath as investigation advances. The public's perception of safety, previously dormant, now carried a latent anxiety. Parents reinforced vigilance, neighbors remained alert, and subtle shifts in routine reflected the collective awareness of proximity to a potential resolution. Columbus existed in the shadow of anticipation, a city unknowingly synchronized to the cadence of procedural tension. By early 2017, the final strands of circumstantial and forensic evidence converged with unprecedented clarity. Investigators obtained permission for targeted interviews, strategically designed to test the suspect's responses while corroborating historical patterns of behavior. Controlled surveillance ensured that every movement, every microexpression, and every verbal response could be documented. Behavioral analysts anticipated potential stress indicators, creating a framework for evaluating truthfulness and alignment with prior evidence. The pursuit of clarity had entered its final, delicate phase. The suspect's history was scrutinized again with renewed intensity. Financial records, historical addresses, employment data, and personal connections were all revisited. Patterns emerged that had previously gone unnoticed: unexplained absences, behavioral anomalies, minor incidents dismissed at the time but now framed as contextually significant. Each data point was integrated into a multidimensional profile, reinforcing both motive and opportunity. Investigators recognized the psychological weight of the approach. Every observation, every question, carried the potential to elicit revelation or deflection. Precision was paramount. Simultaneously, the forensic team revisited the minutiae of prior physical evidence. Fibers, DNA, chemical residues, and environmental traces were analyzed with the latest technologies, producing previously unattainable connections. Minute deviations, once dismissed as irrelevant, now demonstrated consistent alignment with the suspect's presence and actions. The mosaic of evidence was finally achieving cohesion. Temporal, spatial, behavioral, and forensic dimensions intersected, creating a scenario whose internal consistency was undeniable. As spring approached, the investigation entered a tense equilibrium. Investigators maintained continuous surveillance, alternating between passive observation and controlled interaction. The suspect's reactions were monitored meticulously: vehicle movement, foot traffic, timing, microbehaviors, and response to environmental stimuli. Analysts charted every fluctuation, refining models of behavior to anticipate potential engagement. Months of patience, observation, and methodical assembly of evidence were culminating in a precise window for action, a moment when historical reconstruction could meet real-time intervention. Throughout this period, the Larkin family lived with a suspended awareness, sensing the proximity of breakthrough without knowing its exact nature. Each conversation with investigators, each procedural update, carried emotional weight. The anticipation of resolution, justice, clarity, closure, was intertwined with fear. The confrontation might reveal truths long feared, and the emotional impact could be devastating. Yet, hope persisted, fragile but persistent, threaded through years of absence and uncertainty. By mid-2017, the operational framework was finalized. Controlled questioning, surveillance, and potential apprehension were coordinated with exacting precision. Investigators had built a lattice of evidence, each thread reinforcing the other: fibers, DNA, behavior, environmental analysis, witness statements, and surveillance footage. The suspect's patterns, carefully predicted and observed, now allowed for strategic engagement without compromising procedural integrity. The culmination of years of patient work had arrived at a threshold where clarity was within reach. The city continued its daily rhythm above the tension. Streets bustled, commerce proceeded, and ordinary life appeared unaffected, yet an invisible pulse threaded through Columbus, synchronized to the meticulous unfolding of the investigation. The cold case, long dormant, had transformed into a live operation, a convergence of technology, behavioral science, forensic expertise, and human intuition. Every element, from microfiber to psychological profiling, had been integrated to produce a precise understanding of the past and the present simultaneously. Detectives, analysts, and behavioral specialists understood the stakes. One misstep could undo years of work, one misjudged response could dissolve the fragile coherence of evidence. Every movement, every observation, and every prediction had been calibrated with painstaking care. The convergence of technology, intuition, and forensic science had produced a scenario poised at the intersection of revelation and action. The cold case, once an abstraction frozen in time, now shimmered with immediacy, demanding attention, resolution, and vigilance. Summer of 2017 arrived with a deceptive calm, as if Columbus itself held its breath, unaware of the invisible storm converging in quiet streets, unassuming apartments, and the shadowed paths of everyday life. The cold case, dormant for a decade, had transformed into a living, pulsing narrative. Every surveillance camera, every fiber, every digital trace had been orchestrated into a lattice of evidence that now pointed unambiguously toward the suspect. Investigators moved with the precision of chess masters, anticipating each step, each reaction, each fleeting gesture that might reveal the final truth. The suspect, unaware of the intensifying scrutiny, continued his routines with habitual care. Observers documented patterns, noting subtle consistencies, leaving at exact times, taking the same routes, avoiding specific intersections, and reacting predictably to environmental stimuli. These routines, once merely indicative of normal behavior, were now understood as mechanisms of concealment, the very habits that had enabled evasion for years becoming, ironically, his vulnerability. Analysts noted micro-adjustments in movement, slight hesitations, and environmental awareness that would now guide the investigative approach. Simultaneously, behavioral profiling sharpened. Specialists reviewed every known interaction of the suspect with the environment, correlating microbehaviors, stress responses, and historical actions to predict likely reactions under controlled engagement. Observed tendencies, avoidance of attention, meticulous concealment of personal details, subtle dominance over immediate surroundings, aligned with patterns hypothesized during the earlier analysis phase. The result was a precise behavioral roadmap, anticipating each decision, each reflexive action, and each potential concealment strategy the suspect might deploy if confronted. Investigators maintained continuous digital surveillance. Vehicle tracking, social media monitoring, and communication analysis created a comprehensive view of the suspect's temporal and spatial existence. GPS data verified the movement of vehicles, surveillance cameras confirmed presence in critical locations, and digital communication logs revealed contacts, timing anomalies, and potentially incriminating interactions. Each data stream was cross-referenced, anomalies flagged, and predictive models refined. What had once been scattered, circumstantial fragments of information had coalesced into an integrated operational picture. At the same time, forensic specialists revisited every tangible piece of evidence. Fibers recovered from Emma's clothing, dust particles, chemical residues, and DNA traces were examined using the latest technology. Previously indeterminate matches now yielded high-confidence correlations, reinforcing the timeline and proximity of the suspect to Emma's last known location. Analysts compared vehicle interiors, household surfaces, and clothing fibers, identifying patterns that aligned with investigative hypotheses. Each microdetail reinforced the narrative, each corroboration narrowing the margin of doubt. By mid-2017, investigators began preparing for controlled interviews. Every detail of timing, location, and environment had been calculated to create a scenario where the suspect's responses could be observed, interpreted, and verified. Microbehaviors, eye movement, body language, and verbal cadence were to be monitored meticulously. Behavioral specialists predicted stress responses, avoidance tactics, and potential deflection strategies. The team recognized the delicate balance. The suspect needed to be engaged without awareness of the full evidence structure, preserving the opportunity for confession or revealing inconsistencies. The community remained in a tense state of alert, albeit unaware of the imminent procedural engagement. Local media reported cautiously, investigation nearing critical phase, long cold case could see breakthrough, community hears of potential progress in missing person case. Neighbors remained vigilant, casually observing movements, noting unfamiliar behaviors, but unaware of the precision with which law enforcement orchestrated every step. The cold case, long a ghost in the collective consciousness, was now palpably present, hovering at the periphery of public awareness. Investigators revisited Emma's social history in parallel. Friends, co-workers, and acquaintances were re-interviewed with refined focus, emphasizing minor details that had been previously overlooked. Offhand remarks, small deviations from routine, and forgotten interactions were now imbued with new significance. One friend recalled an unusually long absence of the suspect near Emma's apartment, a minor observation previously dismissed but now consistent with accumulated surveillance and forensic data. The collective weight of these seemingly trivial recollections reinforced the investigative trajectory. The suspect's known associates were also carefully evaluated. Friends, co-workers, and acquaintances were subtly interviewed to assess potential knowledge, awareness, or involvement. Behavioral patterns, inconsistencies in recollection, and unexplained incidents were catalogued. Analysts sought micropatterns that, while not immediately incriminating, could reveal indirect influence, knowledge gaps, or potential accomplice activity. This layer of investigation was critical. Cold cases often hinge on peripheral information, the minutiae of social interaction that can reveal otherwise hidden truths. By late summer, the operational strategy was set. Controlled surveillance ensured that the suspect's every move was documented without alerting him to the investigative focus. Analysts monitored vehicle routes, environmental interactions, and communication patterns in real time, ready to adapt to unanticipated deviations. Behavioral specialists prepared observation protocols to capture micro-responses, ensuring that any subtle indication of guilt, knowledge, or stress would be recorded and analyzed immediately. Years of patient accumulation of evidence were now reaching the moment of critical engagement. Emma's family continued to live in suspended awareness, guided by careful communication from investigators. Each update carried emotional weight, relief at progress, tempered with anxiety about potential revelations. Parents and siblings offered insights into Emma's routines, preferences, and personality, providing context to refine behavioral and forensic models. The human element, memory, intuition, and lived experience, remained essential. Investigators relied on these perspectives to anticipate reactions, interpret anomalies, and contextualize observed behaviors during controlled engagement. In early autumn, surveillance confirmed multiple patterns coinciding with historical data. The suspect's vehicle was observed following predicted routes, arriving at expected locations, and interacting with environmental stimuli consistent with the behavioral profile. Minor deviations, carefully documented, were noted as stress indicators or potential triggers for engagement. Analysts prepared a series of controlled observational experiments, designed to elicit subtle responses without compromising procedural integrity. Each step required precision, patience, and coordination, ensuring that years of accumulated evidence would not be undermined by miscalculation. The operational environment extended beyond surveillance. Investigators conducted environmental reconstructions, lighting conditions, pedestrian patterns, vehicle positioning, and seasonal variations were meticulously documented. Analysts used this data to predict microbehavioral responses, understanding how the suspect would navigate space, respond to stimuli, and potentially reveal knowledge of events surrounding Emma's disappearance. Every detail, from streetlight orientation to minor construction changes, was integrated into the operational framework. As the autumn progressed, the team prepared the final phase of engagement, controlled interviews designed to confront the suspect with evidence and observe behavioral reactions. Each session was planned with precision, timing, location, environmental conditions, and anticipated responses were all scripted to maximize the likelihood of confession or disclosure. Behavioral specialists prepared contingency analyses, ready to interpret microexpressions, stress responses, and verbal nuance. Analysts ensured all data streams, video, audio, physical observation, were synchronized for real-time evaluation. The city itself seemed oblivious, moving through ordinary rhythms, while the invisible tension of meticulous investigation unfolded beneath its surface. Streets, parks, and neighborhoods were unknowingly hosting a live orchestration of surveillance, observation, and preparation. Law enforcement had transformed ordinary urban spaces into controlled environments of behavioral and forensic study, leveraging the familiar and the mundane to elicit extraordinary revelation. By late 2017, every preparatory step was complete. Investigators had accumulated decades of data, meticulously reanalyzed evidence, corroborated witness testimony, and integrated behavioral modeling. The suspect's patterns were predictable, the environmental variables mapped, the forensic connections established. All elements converged toward a moment of confrontation that had the potential to resolve nearly a decade of uncertainty. The cold case, once a ghost haunting Columbus, had been transformed into a dynamic, actionable scenario where evidence, observation, and human psychology intersected with precision. The anticipation was palpable within the investigative team. Each member was acutely aware of the stakes. One misstep could compromise the delicate web of evidence. One misjudged engagement could erode years of painstaking work. Patience, precision, and coordination remained paramount. The operational design accounted for every variable, yet the unpredictability of human behavior loomed. Detectives, analysts, and behavioral specialists recognized that success depended not only on evidence but on their ability to interpret, anticipate, and respond to the subtle nuances of real-time interaction. The stage was set for revelation. Years of absence, uncertainty, and painstaking reconstruction of events had brought the investigation to the cusp of closure. Every fiber, every trace, every micro-observation now aligned, creating a comprehensive, multidimensional understanding of the suspect's actions. The city remained unaware of the convergence unfolding in its streets and homes, as the invisible orchestration of justice approached its decisive moment. The cold case, long suspended in time, was poised to emerge into clarity, and every observer, analyst, and investigator was acutely aware of the imminent gravity. Autumn deepened in Columbus, and the city's ordinary rhythm masked a tension that only a few understood. Detectives had positioned themselves with precision, surveillance points established along every route the suspect could plausibly take, hidden cameras capturing angles that would reveal the smallest micro-movement, every behavioral nuance catalogued in anticipation. For years, Emma's absence had been a void in the collective consciousness, a haunting that lingered in the edges of memory. Now, it was poised to converge with the relentless logic of evidence and human observation. The suspect, routine-driven and seemingly oblivious to the magnifying lens trained upon him, moved through the city with habitual care. Every departure, every turn, every interaction was anticipated by the investigators. Behavioral analysts predicted responses down to microseconds, hesitation when confronted with environmental variables, subtle changes in eye movement, shifts in posture. Each of these tiny deviations was a potential key, a thread that could unravel the carefully maintained narrative of concealment that had endured for years. Forensic analysis, painstaking and unyielding, had fortified the foundation of engagement. Fibers linking Emma to the suspect's environment, dust particles from his vehicle, and chemical residues once considered inconclusive were now integrated into a coherent framework. DNA traces, amplified with contemporary methods, confirmed proximity and interaction. Environmental reconstructions placed the suspect in specific locations at precise times, reinforcing timelines built over a decade. What had once been fragmentary evidence now functioned as a multidimensional map, guiding the investigation with undeniable clarity. The Larkin family remained at the periphery of procedural activity, informed strategically to maintain psychological support while avoiding contamination of ongoing observation. The weight of nearly a decade of uncertainty had left them poised between hope and dread. Each new revelation, each shift in evidence, was a tidal wave of emotion, relief mingled with fear, anticipation shadowed by the possibility of new trauma. Investigators relied on this human context, understanding that family insight into Emma's habits, preferences, and personality could inform predictive behavioral models. By mid-October, operational planning reached its apex. Controlled confrontation strategies were mapped with exhaustive precision. Surveillance data, forensic evidence, and behavioral predictions all intersected, creating a scenario where engagement could elicit the maximum possibility of truth without alerting the suspect to the breadth of accumulated evidence. Micro-observation protocols were finalized, eye tracking, body language, micro-expressions, verbal hesitations, all indicators meticulously catalogued for immediate analysis. The team understood that years of patient investigation depended now on a fragile window of real-time opportunity. Community awareness remained largely peripheral but heightened. Media coverage, carefully curated, hinted at progress without revealing operational details. Cold case nears resolution, investigators close in on long unsolved disappearance, Columbus residents brace for possible breakthrough. Locals were alert, subconsciously influenced by the pattern of investigative presence, yet unaware of the orchestration of observation that had become nearly surgical in precision. The city's daily pulse continued, unknowingly synchronized with the slow, deliberate tempo of law enforcement engagement. Investigators re-examined digital footprints with renewed intensity. Communication records, online interactions, and historical phone metadata were integrated with real-time surveillance. Analysts tracked patterns of contact, duration anomalies, and unaccounted-for interactions. Minor digital traces, once ignored or inconclusive, now offered contextual depth, correlating with physical observation and behavioral expectation. This integration of technology, environment, and psychology allowed the team to anticipate the suspect's likely actions in real time. Environmental factors were also critical. Investigators mapped seasonal variations, pedestrian and traffic patterns, and environmental stimuli, understanding how these could influence the suspect's movement and microbehavior. Even minor variables, a malfunctioning streetlight, a brief detour, subtle weather changes, were included in predictive models. This attention to detail allowed for controlled engagement with the suspect under conditions optimized for observation, ensuring that each microexpression or verbal hesitation could be contextualized accurately within the investigative framework. By early November, the first phase of controlled confrontation began. Observers stationed discreetly documented the suspect's reactions to seemingly mundane stimuli, brief interactions with neighbors, casual glances at parked vehicles, subtle hesitations at street corners. Behavioral analysts noted shifts in posture, minute-eye movements, and microexpressions that hinted at recognition of previously overlooked cues. Each observation reinforced predictions, validating years of accumulated evidence and behavioral modeling. The suspect, unaware of the scrutiny, continued his routines, yet the invisible web of observation was closing in. Simultaneously, controlled questioning sessions were prepared. Investigators planned sequences of inquiry designed to gradually escalate pressure without alerting the suspect to the cumulative evidence against him. Questions were phrased to evoke memory, test consistency, and provoke microbehavioral indicators of stress or deception. Every verbal cue, every hesitation, every subtle gesture was monitored in real time, creating a feedback loop between observation and analysis that allowed investigators to refine strategy dynamically. The suspect's associates, previously peripheral, were subtly re-engaged. Friends and co-workers were monitored for behavioral changes or inadvertent disclosures. Minor inconsistencies in statements or memory gaps were cross-referenced with surveillance and forensic evidence. Even indirect knowledge, fragments of observed behavior, and casual remarks were integrated into the operational model. Every thread, no matter how minor, contributed to the emergent pattern that had been years in the making. The Larkin family, though largely shielded from procedural specifics, were prepared for imminent confrontation. Investigators provided context to manage expectations, potential outcomes, emotional contingencies, and strategic communication during interviews. Family insight continued to inform behavioral predictions, particularly regarding Emma's habits, social interactions, and likely responses under stress. This partnership of lived experience and investigative expertise was critical, allowing subtle behavioral indicators to be interpreted accurately in the context of personal knowledge. By mid-November, investigators identified a final set of patterns that enabled the next stage of controlled confrontation. Vehicle routes, environmental interactions, and microbehavioral tendencies coalesced into predictable scenarios. Surveillance confirmed these patterns repeatedly, each instance reinforcing the operational plan. Behavioral specialists prepared to observe, interpret, and react in real time, ensuring that every deviation or microexpression could be documented, contextualized, and integrated into the case. The stage was set, the years-long investigation was approaching its decisive moment. In parallel, forensic reanalysis continued. Fibers, DNA, chemical residues, and environmental particulates were cross-verified across multiple locations, including the suspect's residence, vehicle, and Emma's last known location. Previously ambiguous evidence now formed coherent spatial and temporal linkages, establishing proximity, opportunity, and potential intent. Each microdetail reinforced the broader narrative, creating a multidimensional evidentiary framework capable of supporting legal confrontation. Operational simulations were conducted internally. Investigators ran controlled scenarios to anticipate possible suspect reactions, refine questioning strategies, and adjust surveillance positioning. Every potential contingency was modeled: denials, deflections, feigned ignorance, stress-induced microbehaviors. Analysts prepared response protocols for each scenario, ensuring that evidence capture remained uninterrupted and behavioral interpretation accurate. The culmination of years of patient investigation was now guided by meticulous procedural choreography. Community tension remained latent yet palpable. Media reports continued to suggest progress, local residents speculated cautiously, and neighborhood vigilance subtly increased. Yet the public remained largely unaware of the precision, scale, and immediacy of investigative action unfolding around them. Streets, parks, and apartments carried ordinary appearances, masking the extraordinary orchestration of observation, analysis, and anticipation operating beneath the surface. By late November, the investigative team had achieved a delicate equilibrium. All preparatory work, behavioral modeling, forensic integration, surveillance optimization, environmental mapping, and procedural rehearsal, was complete. The suspect's routines were fully documented, predictive behavioral responses cataloged, and micro-observational protocols in place. The convergence of years of evidence and months of live observation created a controlled scenario in which engagement could yield the highest likelihood of revelation without compromising integrity. Every member of the investigative team was aware of the stakes. One misstep, one misjudged response, could unravel the meticulous lattice of evidence. Yet confidence was rooted in the painstaking preparation. Behavioral, forensic, environmental, and procedural integration had created a scenario where truth could be elicited with precision. The cold case, once dormant, suspended in uncertainty for nearly a decade, was now poised to transition from historical reconstruction to real-time revelation. The city continued its daily rhythm above this tension. Ordinary life, unremarkable and unalerted, provided a backdrop against which the extraordinary orchestration of observation and analysis unfolded. Streets, homes, and workplaces carried the unsuspecting continuity of normalcy, while law enforcement, operating invisibly, moved closer to the point where past and present would collide, and where a confession, or some tangible revelation, might finally emerge. The anticipation, painstakingly cultivated over years, now hovered on the precipice of fulfillment. The morning was gray, heavy clouds hanging over Columbus as if the sky itself sensed the tension threading through the streets. Inside a nondescript conference room at the police department, detectives, behavioral analysts, and forensic experts assembled in near silence. Every detail had been accounted for: seating arrangement, lighting, camera placement, observer positions. Outside, the city moved unconsciously, children walking to school, commuters hurrying along cracked sidewalks, shopkeepers opening doors. But here, in this carefully controlled environment, every breath was calculated, every movement deliberate, every second measured. The suspect arrived, unaware that he was entering a space meticulously orchestrated to elicit the truth. He moved with habitual caution, scanning the room briefly but failing to detect the web of observation. Observers noted micro-reactions, a tightening of the jaw, subtle tension in the shoulders, eyes flicking to corners of the room. These were behaviors anticipated by analysts, micro-indicators confirming the accuracy of years of profiling. Each gesture, however slight, was recorded and analyzed in real time, feeding into a predictive model that guided the interrogator's next move. Detectives began with neutral, seemingly innocuous questions, designed to establish baseline behaviors. Name, address, routine inquiries. The suspect responded smoothly, his voice even, his body language controlled. Analysts monitored baseline indicators: blink rate, microtremors, speech cadence. This calibration was critical. Deviations from baseline would later signal stress, awareness, or potential deception. Every word, pause, and glance was logged, compared against historical data, against behavioral models refined over months of observation and years of investigation. As the interview progressed, subtle escalation began. Questions shifted incrementally, probing areas of minor relevance but designed to elicit microbehavioral indicators. Mentions of Emma, her neighborhood, her routines, were inserted casually, almost conversationally, yet with surgical precision. Analysts observed subtle microexpressions, tightening around the eyes, quick shifts of gaze, microfacial twitches that suggested recognition or stress. These were the markers investigators had trained to detect, indicators that the suspect was aware of the proximity of his past actions. The room remained calm, deceptively ordinary. Yet beneath the surface, tension coiled like a spring. Every observer understood the stakes. One misstep, one overly forceful question, one misread behavioral indicator could compromise the integrity of the evidence. Analysts guided detectives subtly, whispering adjustments, confirming deviations, interpreting microsignals. The dance of observation and intervention was delicate, almost imperceptible, yet every movement was critical. The suspect remained unaware that he was being read like an open book, his behaviors catalogued and interpreted against a decade of accumulated knowledge. Detectives began to introduce evidence incrementally, carefully curated to provoke reaction without direct accusation. A photograph, a dated receipt, a contextual anecdote from Emma's life, each piece strategically deployed. The suspect's reactions were slight but telling, a momentary stiffening, a flicker of eye contact avoidance, a micro-shift in posture. Analysts noted each in real time, interpreting these involuntary cues as signals of recognition, connection, or stress. The room, silent to the untrained eye, was electric with unspoken revelation. The interrogation escalated further. Hypotheticals and indirect suggestions were used to test consistency and observe behavior. Questions were phrased to provoke reflection on past events without explicit accusation. Analysts observed gaze aversion, microfacial changes, subtle increases in respiration, behaviors consistent with internal conflict or recognition of culpability. Every word spoken, every pause, every hesitation was catalogued, compared against months of surveillance, years of behavioral profiling, and decades of forensic reconstruction. The web of observation tightened with each passing minute. Detectives began layering contextual evidence more directly. Time frames were discussed, places mentioned, minor details reconstructed. Each reference was designed to confirm recognition while avoiding overt provocation. The suspect responded cautiously, but microsignals of stress continued to emerge: subtle eye shifts, imperceptible hand movements, brief tightening of facial muscles. Analysts whispered interpretations, guiding detectives to follow threads of behavior that suggested awareness of events beyond casual knowledge. The room's tension escalated to a palpable level. Observers, analysts, and detectives all felt the weight of years of unresolved absence condensing into these moments. Emma's family waited in nearby rooms, shielded yet briefed, their anticipation almost tangible. Each micro-indicator observed in the room outside reverberated through the hearts of those who had endured nearly a decade of uncertainty. Every subtle reaction, every involuntary gesture, carried profound significance, signaling the approach of revelation long deferred. Then came a pivotal moment. A photograph of Emma's belongings, items recovered near the suspect's residence years earlier, was placed casually on the table. The suspect's eyes flicked to it immediately, a microsecond reaction that no human observer might notice without training. A subtle tightening of the jaw, a shift in posture, a brief pause in speech. Analysts noted the convergence of indicators: recognition, stress, awareness. This was the threshold. Years of evidence had guided the investigation to this infinitesimal point of behavioral rupture. Detectives maintained a neutral tone, asking the suspect to recount his daily routines, his recollection of specific dates, subtly weaving references to Emma's disappearance. The suspect responded cautiously, but microbehavioral indicators intensified: slight hand movements, involuntary shifts in weight, fleeting avoidance of direct eye contact. Analysts confirmed consistency with prior predictive models. The suspect was processing recognition of his past actions while attempting to maintain composure. The interrogation was operating exactly as designed, a convergence of evidence, observation, and behavioral prediction guiding toward confession. Incremental pressure continued. Hypothetical scenarios, indirect questioning, and subtle references to recovered evidence formed a lattice designed to provoke disclosure. Analysts observed respiration rate, blink patterns, microexpressions, all confirming increasing stress, increasing cognitive engagement with memories of events long concealed. The suspect's defense mechanisms, honed over years of concealment, were beginning to falter under the weight of precise observation and orchestrated provocation. Finally, detectives introduced more direct references. Minor inconsistencies in the suspect's past statements were subtly highlighted. Contextual evidence of proximity to Emma's last known location was introduced without accusation, phrased as hypothetical curiosity. The suspect's microbehaviors intensified: rapid eye movement, slight perspiration, brief tightening of hands. Behavioral analysts signaled to detectives the suspect was approaching critical cognitive and emotional thresholds, the point where concealment would likely collapse under subtle pressure. Emma's family, present in a separate observation room, felt the tension radiating. Years of uncertainty, of absence, of unresolved grief, now coalesced into this single moment. Observers in the room with the suspect noted each micro-reaction, cataloging every involuntary response, every fleeting gesture. The intersection of evidence, behavioral prediction, and real-time observation was producing a tangible shift, signaling the potential for disclosure. Detectives, guided by analysts, continued with careful escalation. Subtle references to dates, locations, and events gradually shifted to direct questions about Emma's disappearance. The suspect responded cautiously, maintaining a veneer of composure, but micro-indicators continued to accumulate: eye contact avoidance, micro-shifts in posture, increased respiration, subtle facial tension. Each behavior was logged, interpreted, and used to refine the questioning approach, drawing the suspect closer to involuntary acknowledgement of past actions. Then, imperceptibly at first, a crack appeared. A slight stammer, a hesitation mid-sentence, a fleeting glance toward evidence on the table. Analysts whispered interpretations: cognitive conflict, recognition, growing inability to maintain the facade of innocence. Detectives pressed with subtlety, guided by observation, evidence, and behavioral modeling. The suspect, trained over years to conceal, now exhibited the first genuine indications of acknowledgement. For several minutes, the room remained in this delicate balance: detectives probing, suspect concealing, analysts interpreting, evidence silently asserting its presence. Each micro-behavior, each subtle reaction, carried significance far beyond its physical manifestation. Years of patient accumulation, decades of uncertainty, and months of precise observation converged into this crucible of psychological pressure. The cold case, dormant for a decade, was approaching the threshold of revelation. And then it happened. The suspect's composure faltered. Eyes flicked downward, shoulders slumped subtly, and for the first time, his voice carried the weight of acknowledgement. The confession was not immediate, not complete, but the rupture had begun. Behavioral indicators confirmed the interpretation: cognitive and emotional thresholds had been crossed, the carefully constructed facade of concealment cracking under orchestrated pressure. Years of evasion, meticulous planning, and careful concealment were giving way to the inexorable weight of evidence and observation. Detectives leaned in with calibrated caution. Analysts whispered guidance: maintain neutral tone, allow pause, observe micro-reactions. The suspect began to speak, hesitantly at first, recounting fragmented memories, acknowledging presence, and confirming proximity. Every word, every pause, every micro-expression was documented, cross-referenced with prior evidence, surveillance, and behavioral prediction. This was the culmination of years of patient, meticulous work. The cold case, long suspended in uncertainty, was finally breaking into the realm of truth. The room, heavy with tension, seemed to breathe collectively with the slow, deliberate unfolding of confession. Observers in adjacent rooms felt the shift. The intersection of evidence, behavior, and human emotion was producing the breakthrough that had eluded investigators for nearly a decade. Micro-indicators continued to accumulate, each subtle gesture reinforcing the emerging narrative. The suspect, gradually relinquishing control, provided fragments that, when pieced together, offered clarity long denied to Emma's family and the community. The confession, at first fragmented, began to coalesce into an undeniable narrative. The suspect's voice trembled slightly as he recounted moments long buried, details he had hoped would remain hidden forever. Detectives listened intently, noting every micro-expression, every slight hesitation, every shift in posture. Analysts observed patterns that confirmed recognition, guilt, and emotional conflict, validating years of predictive behavioral modeling. What had been a carefully constructed facade of normalcy was unraveling under the precision of accumulated evidence and strategic questioning. Outside the observation room, Emma's family waited in near silence, the weight of anticipation pressing down with an almost tangible heaviness. For over a decade, they had endured the uncertainty, the aching absence, the unanswered questions that haunted every birthday, holiday, and ordinary day. Now, in this meticulously controlled environment, the elusive truth began to emerge. Every fragment of the suspect's acknowledgement, every subtle sign of stress, resonated through the hearts of those who had long sought closure. Inside the room, the suspect recounted the timeline of his actions with increasing specificity. Analysts noted micro-behaviors, blinking patterns, shifts in weight, subtle twitches in facial muscles, and minute alterations in speech cadence. Each indicator corresponded with previously collected forensic evidence: fibers, chemical traces, vehicle movements, and surveillance patterns. The convergence was undeniable. This was not conjecture, not circumstantial speculation. This was behavioral, forensic, and psychological alignment culminating in the revelation of truth. Detectives guided the dialogue with measured patience. Questions were phrased with neutral tones, subtly directing the suspect without imposing conclusions. References to Emma's routines, locations, and previously recovered items were introduced carefully, provoking recollection and micro-reactions. Each response was analyzed in real time, compared against historical surveillance data, forensic timelines, and behavioral models. Every pause, hesitation, or deflection carried significance, each serving as a potential key to unlocking further details. The suspect's demeanor shifted gradually. Posture slumped, eye contact wavered, and subtle signs of internal conflict became more pronounced. Analysts whispered interpretations to detectives, confirming that the suspect was transitioning from controlled evasion to reluctant acknowledgement. Speech patterns became less deliberate, micro-expressions betrayed fleeting guilt, and respiration rates subtly increased. The cumulative pressure of years of investigation, the weight of evidence, and the precision of observation had begun to dismantle the intricate layers of concealment. Forensic evidence played a critical role in reinforcing the confession. As the suspect described locations, actions, and interactions, investigators cross-referenced his statements with recovered fibers, DNA traces, and environmental reconstructions. Each microdetail aligned with previous data, validating the integrity of both historical evidence and behavioral observation. Analysts documented these correlations meticulously, ensuring that every aspect of the confession could withstand scrutiny in a court of law. The room, silent to the untrained eye, was a convergence of narrative, evidence, and psychological precision. The emotional intensity of the moment was palpable. The suspect, initially attempting to maintain composure, now exhibited clear signs of stress, microfacial twitches, fleeting glances at evidence, subtle shifts in body weight, and small, involuntary gestures revealing cognitive and emotional engagement with memories long suppressed. Analysts interpreted these behaviors as markers of acknowledgement and cognitive conflict. Each indicator was cross-referenced with historical patterns of evasion, confirming the trajectory toward full disclosure. Emma's family, in the adjacent observation room, experienced a spectrum of emotions. Relief, anxiety, disbelief, and sorrow intermingled as fragments of truth emerged. Years of uncertainty, of imagining every possible scenario, were confronted with the reality of the suspect's acknowledgement. Every microindicator observed in the suspect's behavior translated into an emotional resonance for the family, confirmation of proximity, awareness, and ultimately responsibility. This was the human dimension of closure, intersecting with the meticulous procedural orchestration of justice. The confession deepened. The suspect, pressured subtly but deliberately, began to provide specific details about locations, movements, and interactions that had previously been unknown or only partially understood. Analysts noted alignment with prior forensic reconstructions, vehicle positions, temporal sequences, and physical evidence all corroborated the emerging narrative. Each microbehavior observed, slight shifts in gaze, fleeting facial tension, subtle hand movements, reinforced the authenticity of the confession. The integrated approach of behavioral analysis and forensic validation was producing a breakthrough that had eluded investigators for over a decade. Detectives remained composed, guiding the dialogue to maintain a balance between eliciting information and preserving procedural integrity. Every question was calibrated, every response carefully observed, and every behavioral indicator meticulously logged. Analysts continued to provide real-time feedback, ensuring that microreactions were interpreted accurately and that the suspect remained within the structured framework designed to produce comprehensive disclosure. This precision was critical. One misstep could compromise the confession, one misread behavior could allow concealment to regain control. The room's atmosphere was thick with tension and anticipation. The suspect, increasingly aware of the inevitability of exposure, exhibited cumulative microbehaviors signaling cognitive stress, repeated slight hand adjustments, momentary eye contact avoidance, shifts in posture, microfacial expressions reflecting guilt and recognition. Analysts interpreted these signals as indicators that the suspect was approaching full acknowledgement of actions. Detectives, guided by these observations, calibrated further questioning to ensure that each narrative element was clarified and corroborated against forensic data. Emma's family, though physically separated, experienced the weight of each revelation. Each partial acknowledgement, each corroborated detail, translated into a complex emotional tableau: relief that the investigation was approaching resolution, grief at the confirmation of what had been feared, and anticipation of eventual closure. This emotional resonance underscored the human stakes of the procedural orchestration, highlighting the intersection of investigative precision, behavioral observation, and profound personal impact. Incremental disclosures continued. The suspect, initially hesitant, began to recount the sequence of actions surrounding Emma's disappearance with increasing clarity. Analysts monitored microbehaviors: rapid blinking, slight hand movements, fleeting tension around the eyes, shifts in vocal cadence. Each microindicator, corroborated by forensic evidence, confirmed alignment between narrative and physical reality. The cumulative weight of observation, analysis, and evidence converged, producing a confession that was not only verbal but validated through multiple independent measures. Detectives pressed gently but persistently, introducing additional contextual elements, specific times, recovered items, and minor inconsistencies from prior statements. The suspect responded with microsignals of recognition and stress, further confirming authenticity. Analysts logged every detail, cross-referencing behavioral indicators with previously observed patterns of evasion and concealment. Each microreaction served as both confirmation and guidance, allowing detectives to navigate the complex landscape of disclosure with precision and care. As the interrogation progressed, the suspect's acknowledgement expanded. Locations, movements, and previously unreported interactions were disclosed. Microbehaviors intensified: subtle twitches, fleeting glances, microfacial contractions, and alterations in posture and speech. Analysts confirmed that the suspect was experiencing cognitive and emotional thresholds consistent with recognition, guilt, and acknowledgement of responsibility. The integration of behavioral observation, forensic corroboration, and strategic questioning was producing a confession both detailed and verifiable. The room, though silent, was electric with the convergence of truth. Observers in adjacent spaces noted the incremental collapse of concealment, each microindicator amplifying the significance of the confession. Emma's family, shielded yet acutely aware, felt the emotional resonance of the emerging narrative: confirmation of proximity, acknowledgement of responsibility, and the long-sought beginning of closure. Years of uncertainty, grief, and anticipation were intersecting with the meticulous orchestration of law enforcement and behavioral expertise. Finally, the suspect, unable to maintain composure any longer, delivered the full acknowledgement. Details of Emma's disappearance, previously unknown movements, and interactions were recounted. Behavioral analysts confirmed alignment with prior predictive models and forensic evidence. Detectives documented every statement, ensuring procedural integrity and corroboration. The confession, once fragmented and hesitant, had coalesced into a coherent and verifiable narrative. The cold case, dormant for a decade, had been transformed into resolved reality through the convergence of evidence, observation, and human insight. The impact resonated immediately. Emma's family, while emotionally overwhelmed, experienced a profound sense of validation. Observers, analysts, and detectives recognized the culmination of years of painstaking work. The alignment of microbehaviors, forensic data, and strategic questioning had produced a confession that satisfied both evidentiary and human needs. The long-standing void, once haunting and ambiguous, was now filled with clarity, providing the foundation for legal closure and personal reconciliation.